Hello, storygoers, and welcome back to another episode of Tales from the Cartridge, the video game storytelling podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Eric Penrod.
And I'm your other co-host, Ryan Bauer.
Ryan, it's been a long weekend, a much-needed weekend.
Yeah, sure has.
It's good to see you, though. How are you? And what have you been playing?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling well-rested. I'm feeling excited to spend another couple days just hanging out and playing games and relaxing. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling good. We'll see what next week brings, but right now,
we're not there yet.
We're not there yet. As far as what I'm playing, a couple new things. I haven't had a ton of time to play games with friends because life is wild. So I've been playing kind of some single player bits and bobs here and there. Destiny 2, still really enjoying this season, really enjoying what's going on. You can craft weapons now, which is really fun. And there's all kind of cool stuff going on. So I've been really enjoying that. I tried a game out. I actually only have played the demo, but it was a pretty good demo of a game called Card Shark, which is by Devolver. And it's a really... I haven't played any more of it because it's very stressful, but it's essentially a game where you are a swindler, a card scammer, and you learn all these tricks. Yeah, you may have seen that.
Yeah, I saw it somewhere recently.
It's really cool, but it's really stressful. So, like, an example would be, like, you are pouring wine, and when you're pouring wine, you're looking over somebody's shoulder, and you're seeing how many cards they have and what they have the most suit of. And then you wipe the table in a certain direction to tell your partner what cards they have. But, like, you really quickly have to see and then wipe. And then there's games where you're, like, switching decks out. So when you're pouring, you're taking a deck and putting it in your pocket. You're pulling cards out, putting them in your hand. You're palming them on top of the deck. And then you're grabbing the old deck, and taking out the cards you've pulled so that there's not any... It's really tough, really stressful. And, like, you're betting and how much money you bet. And you can also run out of money. It was really stressful, really fun, but really challenging. And, like, I did not have the brain power in the moment I was playing to remember the four cards. I was like, oh, I'm going to pull these cards. These are great. And I could not remember, so I had to come up with, like, okay, I'm going to pull all twos and a queen of hearts every time. That way, I'll only have to... It's very fun. A very good, like, Devolver indie weird game that I really enjoyed. And then Hardship Shipbreaker, which is a game I played months and months and months ago, is finally fully out, and it's on Game Pass. And the first time I played it, it's a game where you're, like, cutting apart ships, and you have to, like, cut them apart in certain ways, and then you sell the parts, and you get money to upgrade your tools, and you get bigger and more dangerous ships, where some ships have, like, nuclear reactors that you have to, like, carefully pull apart or it blows up and you lose a bunch of money. But the first playthrough, I played the regular time. This playthrough I'm playing where you have to worry about action, but there's no time limit. Which for me means I don't have to rush to get the most valuable stuff. I can slowly and carefully completely destroy this entire ship. And that is so much more satisfying than, like, going in quickly, trying not to break everything, rushing, and then maybe getting one valuable thing. So, like, for my playstyle, I feel much more satisfied being able to completely destroy the ship instead of, like, having to rush and think really carefully about where I'm going. But yeah, those are the three games I'm playing, all very different and very fun and kind of just their own little weird thing.
As I say, like, yeah, those are very, like, wild games.
Yeah.
All very wild games.
Yeah.
It's funny because you said, like, you're playing a lot of single-player focused games, which brings me to this point. I guess, Ryan, I have to tell you, I'm sorry to inform you, based on EA... you could be a 10, but because you play single player games, you're just not. So I'm so sorry to break that to you.
No, oh man.
Our EA overlords have spoken.
They have spoken.
Did you
I
see
have
that?
seen, yeah, like the guy who, like, created or directed Fallen Order was like tweeted about it, like, what are you saying? We made you so much money, you goons. Yeah.
And they did the post after, like, thanks. We deserve the roast. We take the L on that one because anyone who plays single player games is actually an 11 or something like that. And it's like, just stop, EA. You're such embarrassment.
Their media guy just totally beams it up. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just not working. But so anyway, sorry. I'm also not a 10 either. It makes you feel better. So because I like single player games also.
Yeah, they're very good. Yeah, Eric, how are you? What have you been playing?
Yeah, so actually, I should update this. I mean, the last time, I don't think we've played V-Rising. I had it on my list. I don't think we played it. But we did play Raft last time.
We did play Raft. Oh, I forgot that was not on my list. Yeah, we have played Raft. It was so much fun. That's such a fun game. Yeah.
Yeah, Raft, the final update just came out, and it was surprisingly spooky. Like, I
Yeah.
was not. It was funny because like we got on. So if you haven't played Raft or you going to play Raft, you haven't played it, skip this part for a second. For those who don't care, great. So in Raft, you're obviously building rafts, and it's like post-apocalyptic in a sense, where you're just like there's just water everywhere. And we finally come across this giant boat that we're supposed to find, and so we went inside and we played with our good friend Dave, who did our episode of Assassin's Creed. And we went inside looking around. I think you were still on the raft getting something before
I
you came
did.
in.
I was just goofing off on the raft. Yeah.
and Dave and I turned a corner, and this mutant rat just came out of nowhere, and I literally like yelled in fear. I was just terrified. I had no idea what was. I just Raft has been so pleasant, and just kind of like just make sure you're hydrated and have food, and you're okay. And then a giant rat comes out of nowhere. It's like, okay, this game has totally changed in a way that I was not anticipating. Yeah, so Raft has been fun. It is a good game. I highly recommend it. I beat Skull finally. Yes, it was. Which I want to go back to that in a second. I've been playing a lot of like old school N64 games again with my girlfriend. We've been really getting into Mario Kart again, which is frustrating and also really fun. It's fun because I love Mario Kart 64. It's one of my favorite games ever. It's just such a good game. But I remember being so much better at it than I am now, and I want to blame the Switch controllers. I don't have the N64 Switch controller thing. I want it so badly, but I want to believe I was better at this game than I am now because I'm constantly falling and it's constantly frustrating. And also, like, I used to really pride myself in my ability in Mario Kart, and my girlfriend just destroys me every time. And she's hearing me say that right now, and I'm sure it's very validating to hear me say that. Though I will wreck her in the new one every time, so she can. No, I was going to say something inappropriate, I guess. She can suck it, but that seems inappropriate. I'm not going to say that. I'll take that out.
She can continue to be good at this game. Yeah.
Yeah. Keeping great at this game. Thanks a lot. Also playing a lot of Pokemon Snap, which Pokemon Snap it's not underrated, but it almost feels like it is. At least Pokemon Snap 64. It's just such a calming and relaxing game. Unless you can't hit something with a ball or an apple in the face, which just seems kind of degrading in a sense and animal abusey, but it doesn't matter. It's a lot of fun, a lot of good times. And then last but not least is Apex Legends. Our friend Dave and Tyler and Tyler hasn't played yet, but I think he's going to. Have been playing some Apex again, and it's just good to kind of be back. I think it's a game. My internet is so poor to download games here that I finally have Apex downloaded, and so I'm just waiting for other games to download, like Final Fantasy VII Remake, because I want to go back and beat it. But I'm just waiting forever for its download. So I've been playing Apex, and it's actually been a lot of fun. So now I'm kind of hooked on that again. So anyway, a lot of talking. Before we continue, though, actually, I'll do my spiel first, and then I'll jump into the first mini topic, if that's cool.
Yeah.
Storygoers, we hope that you enjoyed our last episode, which is our memory card episode. Ryan killed it with that. You did such a great job with it. I think it turned out so good. It was awesome. And please, if you haven't listened to it and you're interested in kind of getting someone else's perspective on what their favorite game is, Haney from First Encounter podcast came on the show, and he did such a great job talking about his favorite game, which I'm not going to say because I don't want to spoil it. You should go listen to it if you haven't. And of course, if you have any thoughts, feelings, or perspectives, we would love to hear them by emailing your thoughts, feelings, and perspectives to talesfromthecartridge@gmail.com. All of the E's are threes. You can also comment on our social media posts. Find us on Instagram, and we're pretty sporadic on Twitter, I'll be honest with you. Instagram is definitely the better one to talk to us through. But DM us or comment on our posts. Let us know what you think, and we will happily share those on the next episode. Before we get into our main topic, though, I want to jump in because I had a lot of thoughts about something. I want to talk to you about them, Ryan. I usually I'm curious what you think. I usually pride myself in my ability to kind of persevere in a game to finally beat it and gain that sense of, like, I did this, even when it's, like, super hard and super frustrating. And I had that mentality when playing Skull. And for anyone who doesn't know, Skull is a roguelike game where you are this little skull person and you swap different skull heads to get different abilities, and you're trying to save the demon king from this evil human civilization or human kingdom. It's a really challenging roguelike, and it got to the point probably 2 weeks after I started getting back into it where I was ready to beat the game. I had upgraded everything I could. It was ready to go, and I still was dying in the same spots, or even before that, the same spots I would be dying in, like earlier. where I got to the point where I really wanted to beat it. I really felt like I had invested so much time into it, so I decided to switch to easy mode and see what that would look like. And it ended up being the game. It actually became extremely easy. Between easy mode and normal, the difficulty decreased so much so that I just beat the game. And I decided that I was going to do it. Then after I beat the game, I did get that sense of like, I'm happy I did this. I'm happy I finished the game. But I wasn't sure how I felt about it being on easy mode. And I was really thinking about it and processing a lot because, like, for Hades, I got through Hades after I'd been playing for forever. When I started a new profile, I think I got through Hades on my fourth or fifth try. I got to the end and beat it, or maybe sixth try, something super early, something before like my 10th try. I had gone through the whole game, which I'm really proud of myself on because I think it's a really hard game to do really early. But for Skull, I could not. And granted, they're both roguelites, but very different. But Skull, I just could not get through it. So, I guess my big question is this, Ryan. What are your thoughts on easy mode? Do you feel like that's something that, I don't know? Is this something that should be used more often? Is it something that there's a lot of people have thoughts on it, looking down on it? No one should be using easy mode. There are people who have the idea that like easy mode is, if you want to enjoy the game and it's becoming frustrating, then easy mode is that option to enjoy the game and get through it and be happy that you finished it. So I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question because I think there's a couple things going on here. First off, like there's easy mode for accessibility, right? For just making the game playable for individuals who do not have the dexterity or the physical ability to do so because of something in their life or because of something that they have. So that easy mode for that, I think, is a no-brainer and should always be an option because the purpose of a game is to be able to be played, and everyone should have the opportunity to play those games. So I think whether or not an easy mode exists, for me personally, it isn't a question. The game should be playable by everyone because no one should be penalized for not being good at games is kind of my feeling. That being said, I understand there is this, depending on, and I think there's also a individual and a personal connection to here. Like, there are some people who it's really important that they don't feel that sense of accomplishment unless they play on a hard difficulty, or what they enjoy about games is a sense of accomplishment they get from doing something that's hard. And I think that kind of can come up to personal reasons or why they play games. I think for me, it's a little different because I am not somebody who thinks about games in that way. I mean, certainly I like to play a game that I like that sense of accomplishment. But like for Hades, for example, I was playing that game with my partner, and it was one of her like first games that she played through. And we got to a point where we hit a wall where we could not move forward. And I think if we didn't put it on God mode, where you got a little bit, things got easier, I don't think we would have finished that game. I don't think, and she's played it more than I have now. She's put more time in Hades than I have because she really loves that experience. But I think if she would have hit that wall and not had that progression, she would have fallen off of it. And I think for me, I've had that similar experience with some games as well, where I get to something, I'm smashing my head against something, and if it's for too long, I will just turn the difficulty down because for me, that sense of accomplishment is great, but I want the progression. I play games for that sense of moving forward, numbers going up, for accomplishing things, but it doesn't necessarily have to be very difficult things. But also, I'm not very good at a lot of video games, so that also might be part of it too. Is like if there is a game where I have to think through something, if I have to solve a puzzle or I have to come up with a strategy, I am far more successful than where I have to learn a pattern or I have to memorize move sets. That's just something that isn't satisfying to me that I think is satisfying for other people. Long story short, I think having that ability to move between those game modes is really important for approachability and accessibility, to make the games and our things that we enjoy welcoming to everyone. I think it's important to have those easier difficulties. I never finished Metroid Dread because it was too hard. If there was an easier difficulty, I might have had a more positive experience with that game. Whereas of right now, it's an unfinished game I have no interest in going back to because I got stuck on something and I have no interest, bashing my head against something because I have so much time and I have a lot of games I want to play. I'm not going to waste, 3 hours fighting a boss. But again, that's my own personal kind of feeling. I know there are some people who will who play harder difficulty games, Dark Souls games, or those types of games, that they really enjoy memorizing boss patterns, and that sense of accomplishment they get is really important. But I also think at the same time there has to be an option for other people who don't want that, but want to experience some version of that. Because I think games are for everybody, and they need to be for everybody, no matter what your ability level is. And I think for your own personal, if you want to do something difficult because it makes you feel good and because it makes you feel accomplished, I think that's really great. And I think that something that should be celebrated. But I don't think there should be any kind of gatekeeping where if you're not good enough, you don't get to experience this. If you're not quick enough with your fingers, you don't get to experience this. Because that just ends up being a I'm better than you experience. And I don't think that's good for the industry. I don't think that's good for people. I don't know if I've answered the question or if I just talked about a bunch of nonsense. But I personally would not feel bad about putting difficulties down on things. I have done that in the past when I get stuck on something. But I also play games sometimes for different reasons. Like knowing you as a person, you really like that feeling of accomplishment. There are you like learning those movesets. That's something that you really enjoy and you're really good at. It isn't something I really enjoy and I'm really good at, so I don't invest in that experience, and that isn't how I tie my success to an experience, if that makes sense. But that is a totally valid way to experience games. I just think if that isn't the way you experience games, you shouldn't be penalized or gatekeeped or cut out of games, because I don't think that's fair. Or if not that you just don't want to spend the time, but you physically are incapable of it, that also doesn't feel fair. It's really tricky. There's this weird accessibility, approachability, but like the designer's vision challenge that's going on there that's really hard, because I think for a game like Metroid Dread, for example, they wanted it to be hard. There was no easy mode when that game shipped because their vision was this is a scary hard game. What that means is a lot of people wouldn't have gotten to experience that game, and a lot of people who had physical or mental or some other thing that allowed them to not be successful don't get to have that experience. And I think it's a really satisfying experience, and I really enjoyed it up until I didn't. And now I don't get to have that. Maybe I'll go back to it someday, but now I don't get that satisfaction of completing something. It's just a game that is going to exist in my Switch for who knows how long. But yeah, that's kind of some of my feelings on it, I guess. On easy mode in games, or that sense of accomplishment from coming from easy mode in games. I think it's fine, but I think everyone has to make their own personal decision on what is important to them in games and why they play games. And if you play games because you want that sense of accomplishment, maybe that putting things on easy mode won't make you feel satisfied, but is it worth the time and energy you would have to spend to complete it, or is it worth moving on to something else that you would enjoy?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I don't want to spend 3 days beating something for that sense of accomplishment when I have so many games I need to play right now, or I want to play right now. I'm just going to move on and try something new or play something else. Is kind of where I'm at on that.
I think you're so right in so many ways about the different levels of intricacy in terms of what it means to incorporate an easy mode into a game, and that last one you were just talking about with how much finite time we have and how many games we want to experience. I think that's why I switched my game in Skull to easy mode, because I could not, as much as I love the game, I really do love the game. It's a really fun game. I hope to make a sequel. I'm totally down for that. But I was kind of done. I was ready to experience something different. I wanted to see the ending, and I think that was a moment where I had to take my pride and put it in the back seat, which sounds very egotistical, I think, in a sense. But at the same time, I think say for example, I think say when I was a teenager or younger, right? That sense of pride was really what drove me to want to beat games, to feel accomplished in those games, and I would spend forever trying to beat something, to the point where I would become super frustrated, and sometimes that win wouldn't really feel very good because I'd be so angry, and I would want to feel that sense of pride, and I wouldn't, and sometimes I would, and it was almost a weird I I don't know how to explain this, but like it's just that weird sense of accomplishment that like sometimes you get, sometimes you don't, and it's like when you do get it, it's almost like, well, I want to feel that again sometimes. Um, but anyway, I think now as a much older, and I like to think more mature person, or more, intellectually mature person, I can see like the worth of like my time, and like understanding that I only have so much time in a day anymore compared to like when I had infinite time. It felt like as a teenager or a child, and that need to kind of move forward and just experience more things. And that's actually, I think, and and going back to what your point with accessibility, I think you're, again, like I don't think you can really argue with that. Like everybody should be able to experience a game regardless of ability, ability to play that game. So if like someone needs to be able to have more accessibility and be able to enjoy that game more, I think 100%, like who cares, right? I think I unfortunately feel like it's the people who get a lot of validation and worth from comparing themselves to other people and what their accomplishments are, which I would argue is not healthy at all, and I think that if you're trying to compare yourself to someone else who struggles at a game, one, why are you comparing yourself to someone else that's not you? That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, and especially in something like this, like a single player game. Like, why would we comparing ourselves, when the other person was probably better at you at something else? So like, is it really that much of an accomplishment when you could just be comparing yourself to yourself, comparing yourself to yourself, what your accomplishments are? I think it's much more of a validating and more of a way to feel proud of yourself by continuing to achieve and push through. I'm railing at this point, but I guess the main thing I want to say though is that I don't think there's anything wrong with an easy mode. I know that, like, for example, Sifu is a game that was hard, and it takes a lot of, like you said, Ryan, like timing and skill set and things like that. And when they announced they're making an easy mode for it, I was like, that's weird. I feel like Sifu isn't a game that needs an easy mode. I feel like it needs to be hard. But now, having even after going through it together, we read the story together, how great the story was, how much fun the story was. Yeah. For someone to not be able to experience that story and how fun that was, that's a shame. That's a total shame. And if they can only do that by playing on easy mode, then more power to them. Because honestly, maybe that's more enjoyable, and that's cool. So I think that in the end, after kind of processing it a lot, I came to the conclusion that I'm happy that I put Skull on easy mode. I'm happy that I experienced the story, and I'm happy I get to move on to something else and have those fond memories rather than me being in a Metroid Dread situation like you. And you're right. Yeah, towards you. I'm the same as you. Actually, I dropped Metroid Dread as well. As much as I love Metroid, I could not continue, mostly because I just kept getting lost, and it was really frustrating. And I was just like, I just can't spend this much time roaming the same places over and over again trying to figure this out. But at the end of the day, it's like, how can I retain my happiness, retain my composure, retain my sense of self without jeopardizing that for something that isn't worth jeopardizing for? And I feel like video games, as much as I love video games, are not worth jeopardizing my happiness to achieve something in them. So, yeah. Hopefully, stories, you got something. You got something out of that conversation.
Yeah, I think it's a good conversation to have. It's a good conversation to have. Yeah.
I would love to hear other people's perspectives on easy modes and what that is for them. If they use easy modes, if they strictly don't, or if it's on a game by game basis. I think that'd be super interesting to learn more about. I never really thought about it until I had to do it, and now I feel like I understand so much better. But I think we can all. I would hope we can all agree at the end of the day that in terms of accessibility, easy modes should always be there. I think 100%. It makes most total sense. So. Yeah. The idea that someone can't experience a game and the story that game provides, or just the experience, like, can you imagine, like I don't know, I think the one that and I is God of War. God of War is a challenging game, but like the ending of that game is so just like, the new one. I mean, it just like really hits you. And for someone who needs to see that story, if they couldn't, and they couldn't beat that game because it's too hard, that's just a shame. That's just a total shame. So, yeah, I think I read too. I think it's God of War, the sequel, as like. I could be wrong. It's either God of War or The Last of Us, or I forget what it was. Some game coming out has like an insane number of accessibility things just built into the game, which is so cool. So cool that people care. Like, it's so different now, but in a good way, in a positive way. Yeah. So, all right. Anyway, moving on to our main point of this episode. Thanks for sticking with us so far. Our main topic of this episode is the idea of, what if you went back in time, right? Back to your younger self, knowing what you know now, what games would you be excited for that time around that previously before you were never excited about at all? So like, what games would you be like, oh my god, I that game is gonna be coming out again now? Like, oh, I love that game, compared to like, oh, I don't really care about that game. That game, it doesn't look that good, right? Knowing what you know now, as being a younger person, like, would you be more excited for that game that originally you're like, I don't really care about that game at all? So, does that make sense?
Very fun. Yeah, it's a very fun idea. And it's something that, like, strangely enough, if I go through these games, they are remaking and remastering almost every single game, or there's more of this coming out of every single one of these games, which is really interesting, and I didn't realize that until looking back, that, like, there are new versions of these games coming out that I am so excited about that when they originally come out, I had no idea and didn't care. So really interesting. Yeah, I'm excited.
It almost is like that again. You're right. Like, it is almost like, it's so funny. Is it cool if I start? Can I start?
Please do. No, please do start. I would love that.
I think this is a great way to kind of start the conversation and get what we're talking about. So like, so my first game I'm bringing to the table is actually Kingdom Hearts. Originally, I didn't give two craps about Kingdom Hearts. I knew that it was Disney. And I knew that it was like you go to different Disney worlds, which was fine. But it seemed like when you hear that concept, you think of like kind of cheap Disney games that are just kind of cringy and you don't really care about. So when Kingdom Hearts first came out, I just did not give two craps about it. Did not care. I just thought it was kind of below. I say below me, but like below my age range. You know, like I can't remember. I think I was like a tween. You know, like I thought it was kind of just like a kiddie game. But then I remember this one day, if I remember correctly, right? I constantly think about my memories and like, oh my god, did I like falsify this memory? If I remember correctly, hopefully I'm not lying to you guys. I put down GameStop, but I think originally it was EB Games. I think it was still EB Games at the time, probably. Which if you don't know EB Games, you should totally look it up because wow, blast in the past. But I remember having like a few extra bucks. And I was in that mindset, like when you're a kid and you want to buy something, you don't really care at that point. There's nothing to buy. So you don't really care at that point what you are going to buy, but you just want to buy something, which is not good, but like, you know, it more than likely leads to a bad purchase. But I remember seeing Kingdom Hearts and I thought, this looks weird. Maybe it doesn't seem so kiddie to me. You know, they seem kind of, emo, like, you know, so deep on the cover. I was like, I'll give it a try. So I remember buying it. I think I bought it used. I think it was like super cheap at the time. This is before Kingdom Hearts 2 came out, by the way. So just for to set the scene. I remember buying the game and going home and just kind of like, I had some time. I was like, I'll just throw it in and play it. And that's when I realized I think the first person I realized in the game that I did not realize was going to be in it was, oh man, what's his name? I gotta play Kingdom Hearts 5 or Kingdom Hearts 10 again. Waka, I think his name is. He's the sports guy in the game. Yeah, Blitzball dude. Thank you. Yeah, and I remember seeing like, what? Because I loved Final Fantasy at the time. I was like, what? And then you see Titus, I believe. It's either Titus or Zidane. Titus from Final Fantasy X or Zidane from Final Fantasy IX. I forget which one it is. And then someone from Final Fantasy VIII as kids on the island. And I was like, what? And then as you play, you see Squall and you see Cloud, and it just blew my mind. I had no idea that Final Fantasy characters were in it, and it just totally just engulfed me in the game. Like, it is a game that just immediately, once that connection was made and I realized that what this game was, it totally hooked me. And if I had known better, it would have been a game I would have been so excited for day one, without a doubt in my mind. But because I just didn't know, I see my microphone, and I didn't really care to know, I just totally limited myself on what this game was going to provide me. And it was just, I remember playing that game until I 100% the whole game. I got the final Keyblade, which is the Orichalcum sword, maybe? I forget. That sounds right. Beating Sephiroth, like, it was just like, I was totally like, it just blew me away. Which then led to my complete obsession of Kingdom Hearts 2. Which I was reflecting on in a morning walk with my dog this morning on, like, Kingdom Hearts 2 came out either the day before, or 2 days before, like, a school year was beginning. And that school year dread was coming up, right? But Kingdom Hearts 2 was coming out, and it totally, like, got me out of that rut, and I just played it for, like, 24 hours straight, it felt like. Definitely not, actually, but it felt like it. It just, like, totally built me up to this, like, I love Kingdom Hearts. until Kingdom Hearts 3 came out. But whatever, we're not going to talk about that right now. We're talking about good things. But no, yeah, Kingdom Hearts is definitely a game where I was like, I did not think I was going to love it as much as I ended up loving it. So, Ryan, what is your first game?
Yeah, so
before I cut you off, did you ever play Kingdom Hearts?
Yes, yeah, I played Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. I don't remember why or when or how or like what led me, because I was not a Final Fantasy person, and I still am super not a Final Fantasy person. A friend let me borrow Final Fantasy X, and I may have told the story on this.
I don't remember if I heard this.
And I got to like the first boss, and then like my friend came over, Tyler, not cousin, other Tyler.
Yes.
Sorry, Ghost, I have no idea what I'm talking about. So my friend came over to like see how I was doing, and I was at the first boss. I was like, "This game is really hard. I don't think I really like it." And I guess I hadn't leveled up at all. Like I did not understand the level up system, so I like didn't spend any points. I still don't understand the level up system. I'm sure it's not that hard, but like after that, it just became a running joke that But yeah, so that's my only experience with Final Fantasy. Disney was a big part of my childhood growing up. My grandmother is obsessed with Disney. It's like we would always watch VHSs. I don't remember. I loved and enjoyed Kingdom Hearts. I don't remember why I started playing it. I don't know if it was like you had said something, or if another friend had said something, or if I saw something, or I went over to someone's house and saw them playing it. I have no idea. Or maybe even my cousin who was into Final Fantasy, he had checked it out. I do not remember. But I remember playing those games and really enjoying them. They were really fun. Except Rob was far too hard. I think I tried it 2 times. So I was like, nah, I'm okay. but kind of going back to like the early conversation, that's really interesting. So
seriously.
really good games. Yeah.
I don't know if Final Fantasy, the newest one, had an easy mode or not. I'm very curious now what games have easy modes and don't. It's interesting. But I actually I don't know if I even realized you did play Kingdom Hearts. I'm trying to think of like how old I was when the first game came out. I don't even care about doing the research, but because I don't know if we were friends yet or not. But
not
you
sure.
could have totally been.
I do not remember. It is all just a complete blur. All of high school is just a complete blur, other than like a few moments. Which again, like you, who knows if those are real memories or just things that I think back on and have like made up. You know what I mean?
Morphed,
because memories are weird like that. But
I will say though, if I did go back in time and this situation did happen to me, I'd be so bummed out, because I don't want to go through my childhood.
Same.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Ryan. Well, anyway, your first game.
Yeah, so my first game is the Knights of the Old Republic series. I was such a huge Star Wars fan growing up. Like, I would go to bed listening to the Star Wars soundtrack and, like, dreaming of being the Chosen One and waking up as a Jedi. Like, it was something that I was obsessed with, and it became, like, a big part of... Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm not going to cut you off. I'm not going to make this a thing. I just, like, I pictured you, like, dreaming of being the Chosen One, and you're training with Obi-Wan, you're falling in love with Padme, and you're just killing younglings and, like, just having the best time of your life. You're burning alive. You're so happy.
The thing is, like, growing up, like, I fell in love with Star Wars, and then they announced more Star Wars coming out. So this was even, like, before. So, like, those new Star Wars movies I saw in theaters, and then like Revenge of the Sith, I thought like on premiere day, I was in Florida. I made my sister go with me. It was a fun time. But huge Star Wars fan. I enjoyed RPGs growing up. Like I enjoyed those types of games. I didn't play a ton of them, but I really enjoyed them. But I totally missed Knights of the Republic. I think it was because it only came out on Xbox. I'm assuming. I don't know if it came to PlayStation or not, because BioWare made like pre-exclusive Xbox games for a while. So, like, I had seen it, but I had never touched it. I had heard it was okay, but it was just, like, nothing that I played, because I really only played PlayStation and a little bit of Nintendo. So, like, it was in my periphery, but I don't know, growing up, I just didn't pay attention to games that weren't coming out that I could play, I guess. Or there was just, like, not as much media that I was paying attention to, but either way, totally missed it. Not an interest at all. And then in 2012, it was before I built my gaming PC, but I had a laptop that I got for school, and I eventually went back and replayed the original KOTOR, and it blew me away, both because it's an incredible narrative, like it's maybe one of the best Star Wars stories that has ever been made, and it's just a very fun game. You get to live out that, like, I'm a Jedi and do good things, or I'm a Sith and do bad things, like, that's really, really fun. and they're just really wonderful games. The second game is also very good. I played them, I'm pretty sure, in like rapid succession. They came out in 2003 and 2004, so I was in high school. I was probably like a freshman. No, it was after that because we graduated in '09. So yeah, it came out when I was in middle school. So, but yeah, didn't touch it. Not interested in it. And then years and years later, 2012, when I was like a freshman in college, played it, loved it. No, not a freshman in college, a junior in college. Time's weird.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Time is weird. A junior in college, I went back and had played it on a computer I bought, an old Acer I bought for school, and loved it. And it was one of the best. There's a bunch of games, and actually they're all on this list that I totally missed as a kid, and went back as soon as I got a PC. And they're some of my favorite games I've ever played now. So yeah, Knights of the Republic. What about you? Did you ever play those games? Were you ever Knights of the Republic? Yeah?
Yeah. So actually I was lucky because my father played Xbox a lot. So like every time I'd see him, we usually play a game together. Like for anyone who played the original Xbox, like Mech Warrior was a huge one for my father and I. We used to play. It's totally off topic. Sorry,
It's fun.
It's a good memory. We would play Mech Warrior. If anyone doesn't know, Mech Warrior is just basically like a giant robot game, and like that's when online gameplay was like becoming huge. I feel like I could be totally wrong with that, but that's when at least I started realizing how prevalent it was, and we played online. And there's this thing that my dad and I were kind of like, looking back now. I don't think he listens to the podcast, so I could say this. We were kind of trolls. I think he was trying to teach me how to be a troll a little bit, because like we would play, there'd be like these like amazing, just giant robots that would just destroy, right? And he always was I think it was the Kit Fox, and it's just the small little mech. But the thing about it is it turns invisible. So when we play Catch the Flag, he wouldn't be the crazy giant robot. He would be the Kit Fox, which would then go and turn invisible and steal a flag. And people online would get really, really upset because like it just would happen all the time, to the point where like I got a lot of validation from just trolling these people as the Kit Fox. Like I'm like a young person, right? I'm pretty impressionable, enjoying being this troll, which thank God it didn't stick. But anyway, going back to your question, yes. So my dad played Xbox. He played KOTOR. I would watch him, and I got to play a little bit. And I think as a game, like it was too hard for me at the time because I was so young. Like I didn't understand what I needed to do. I just wanted to fight people. I didn't understand the mechanics. Like I knew how to do the mechanics, but I didn't know like what the best thing to do was in each situation. So it got a little bit of a struggle at times. And plus, I was so impatient because I just wanted to get a lightsaber, and it felt like forever that I was waiting to get a lightsaber.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert. If you plan on playing KOTOR in the future, so please skip ahead if you do.
Very good game.
Maybe I shouldn't spoil it. There's a part. I won't spoil it, actually. I won't spoil the thing.
Yeah, we will cover it in Tales. It's very good.
Yeah. There's a part in the end of the game, the first one, that really shocked me. You know, because the game's all about choices, right? Light side, dark side. And there's a point of the game that kind of changes everything in a sense. And it really, as a young person, I was like, I feel like I've done a horrible thing. You know, like it's really. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Like,
yeah, oh yeah,
yeah. So it's very, very interesting. But I like KOTOR. I think I played KOTOR too, but I remember playing it and beating it and thinking that it made no sense. And then later hearing that they had cut things out of the story that would have made the story make more sense. But I could be totally wrong with that. Again, memories are difficult, but yeah, I did like them though. I did like them a lot. I would love to see them adapt the first game's narrative to a show. I can't talk today.
Yeah.
Even though they're re-releasing it, so really don't need to. It's going to be in the game, but I love the idea of that, like the main character's stuff. I love that. Was so cool, so cool. Yeah. I'm gonna jump to my second one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And this is where I'll probably get canceled. Probably not. But I remember, so my second game that I did not care for at all until later in life was Uncharted 1. The first Uncharted. I remember Uncharted 1 was announced, and I had heard, at least from like what I read online and stuff, that it was just an Indiana Jones knockoff. So I just didn't care. It was always like in a negative light. I feel like Uncharted 1, before it came out, had a lot of, not negative press, but a lot of criticisms already before it was even out. I could be totally wrong with that. And so I just didn't really care until Uncharted 2 came out. And I think it was you, Ryan, who told me how great Uncharted 2 was.
Oh, maybe.
I feel like it was someone in our, and you and I were the ones that played games in our
Yeah,
friend group,
yeah.
so like,
I mean, I remember playing it in college and being absolutely blown away. And I remember us, like, that was something that we really bonded on as those Uncharted games. I don't know which came first, though. I cannot remember which came first. If you told me or I told you, I don't remember.
I think it had to have been you because I didn't care.
Yeah.
I didn't care. And I remember you telling me the beginning of the game where you're climbing up the train hanging from a cliff. And I was like, that sounds awesome. And then, so I think either you let me borrow it or maybe I bought it.
Oh, maybe I did. That would
I think you might have let me borrow it.
Yeah.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I remember playing it and just loving it. And looking back now, I also don't think that Uncharted 2 is a bad game to jump into the series with.
No.
Because you didn't really need to know anything from the first game, quite honestly, besides the characters, but you learned of the characters playing through Uncharted 2.
Yeah.
So I actually was really happy in retrospect that I did skip Uncharted 1 because, not that it was bad, I actually really liked Uncharted 1 a lot, but I think Uncharted 2 was a game that was like, oh, this is great, I love this game. It was great. And going back now to Uncharted 1, obviously a little bit different, but I think it made me appreciate the characters and the gameplay more because I loved Uncharted 2 so much.
Yeah.
But of course, going back now, if I could relive it, I would be so psyched for Uncharted 1 to come out. I'd be just totally hyped about it. I would love that. And of course, get Uncharted 2 like day one. So, it's interesting because like Uncharted is one of the biggest game series now for Sony. Like, I'm sure they'll be announcing something for it soon. I no doubt the series will be living on soon again. But yeah, it was one of those games that like it's so much comparison to Indiana Jones, and I love Indiana Jones, but it becoming like a knockoff. I was like, I don't really care about that. That sounds like not fun. Which now feels stupid to say out loud because it's obviously a very fun game and a really great series. So yeah. Stupid Eric, you dumb. Ryan, what is your second game?
My second game. This is another one. I am now realizing, wasn't realizing that it's all very similar experiences. My second game is the Secret of Monkey Island series. It is a game that was released in 1990, before I was born, in my defense. But they did release a special edition in 2009. And the reason that this game is a game that I would have loved is, I don't know about you, Eric, but I grew up on the Humongous Entertainment games. Putt-Putt, Pajama Sam, Spy Fox. I played so many of those endlessly.
What was Putt-Putt?
Putt-Putt, you're a little car. There's like Putt-Putt
the
goes to
purple
the
car?
zoo. Yep, little purple car.
Okay,
yep.
all right. I did play Putt-Putt. I did play
and Freddy
Putt-Putt.
Fish.
I was more of a...
Freddy Fish is another one, too.
I don't think I played that one. I played Putt-Putt, but I was more of a Carmen Sandiego.
Oh, also very good series of games.
Yeah. You never catch her, though, and that's so frustrating.
Yes.
It's so frustrating. Anyway.
Yeah. But I grew up on these games, those point-and-click games. I didn't know they were point-and-click at the time. I don't know why I eventually found them. I just played them endlessly, especially Pajama Sam 2. There's no need to... No. Thunder and Lightning aren't so frightening. You're a little boy, you have a cape, there's a storm outside, and you, like, go up into the cloud world, and you interact with the weather, and, like, one of the cool things about those games is every time you played them, there were things that were slightly different, things would be slightly moved. So, like, I'd played them so much, I would know exactly where to go. I would go here, grab that, and I would, like, just speedrun it and just play it for comfort. And those Pajama Sam games, and all of those games, I loved so much. And I didn't even realize that these games were inspired by, like, the LucasArts point-and-click games of the late 80s and early 90s. Like, these games existed because of Monkey Island. These games existed because of, Day of the Tentacle. And those really incredible, well-written point-and-click games. And the special edition of Monkey Island came out in 2009, which, again, I had a computer at the time, a laptop. We were just graduating. I was going off to college. Since those early games, I had not had any interest in point-and-click games. I never really went back to them. And it wasn't until, 2019, like 3 years ago, that for whatever reason I had bought the games in 2014, 2015 in some, like, Monkey Island bundle. And I went back and played them and absolutely loved them. The writing was incredible. The characters were fun. The puzzliness of point-and-click adventure kind of brought me back to that nostalgia of being a kid and trying to, like, bash your head against, like, where you get the Y sprocket so you can repair the rain machine. Like, those things that I really enjoyed. And it's a game that I think I would have fallen in love with. The humor is perfect for my type of humor, this kind of silly, wacky, but smart, well-written humor. Doesn't take itself too seriously. it's just a game that now, it's a game series now that I love and cannot wait for the Return of Monkey Island to come out, because they're making a new one and it's coming out soon.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited for it, but it's a game that I never, you know what I mean? Until 2019, I never touched it. It was just kind of a game I knew existed. It was an important game in game history because it kind of created the whole point and click genre, helped elevate it. But it's a game I never played, and now it's one of my favorite series of games. And I think if it were something that, if I was aware that if I had drawn the line between the humongous entertainment games of my childhood and those LucasArts games, I would have lost my mind. I would have been one of the first things I got on my computer just to sit and play. But I just totally missed it because I was in that window where point and click wasn't a big part of my life anymore. And I didn't have the resources to play them. And, oh man, but they're good games. I love them so much. Yeah.
Have you heard about all the stuff with the Return of Monkey Island?
The only thing I've heard of is, I know the art style is different, and I know some of the original writers are going to be on it, but that's kind of the extent of what I've heard. I know it's coming to Switch.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Supposedly, because people have been so... I mean, I'm sure it's a very vocal minority, but I've been so down on the new art style that the creator of the game series that was working on it has said he's going to go silent because he just can't handle the negativity anymore.
Oh, that's really
online.
sad. Yeah,
it's really sad. Which I looked at the art style and it didn't look bad to me. I
No,
don't
it looks
understand if people
fine.
are really upset by it.
And I mean, like, if you're comparing it to the art style when it originally came out, it was like, you could not see anything, it was pixels. And then they went to this, like, really beautiful hand-drawn, but that was just, like, a recreation of the pixels. This feels like a whole new art style that feels like very... like, it's hearkening back to the games from that time, but, like, the 3D games of that time in a way that I think is really cool, and I think it's great. But, yeah, that's a bummer. That's a bummer that the gamers are so mean, but they are.
Yeah. Some. Not all of them. Not everyone listens to this show.
No, exactly. All good.
And if you are, then get out.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, Monkey Island. I love those games. I love the humor. I love the point and clickiness of it. I want to go and replay them all before the return comes out.
That's good, yeah.
They're on iOS. They're on Steam. They're all very cheap, so go check them out. They're very fun.
They're so good.
Yeah.
If you want to at least listen to the first episode, we have that. You should go listen to it.
It's one of my very favorite episodes we've done. Yeah.
It was it was the first episode we ever did sound effects.
Yeah.
And you were the first one to edit that, and it turned out so good.
Yeah, very good.
So such a great episode. Such a great episode. Yeah. My last game that I would like to talk about for this episode that I did not care about until eventually I did. If I had gone back, I would totally care about this moving forward. Was actually the Final Fantasy series, but specifically Final Fantasy IX. That was my very first one. I was a Nintendo fanboy. Live, die, Nintendo. Didn't really know anything about Sony at all. I knew of it. Didn't care about it. I was all about Nintendo. We were a Nintendo family. We didn't talk about... this is before Xbox even came out, which is wild to say and sounds super old as an old sentence. But it wasn't until I went to a friend's house and he showed me Final Fantasy IX, and it just like I could not believe what I was seeing. Right, the disc going in, I was like, "This disc games?" Like I was so shell shocked by like it's not in a cartridge. You know what I mean? Like you don't blow on it. You know what I mean? Like it's in a disc. But I remember him putting it in and playing it, and I remember thinking like this is so much like Mario and Zelda on the N64, the 3D, but just there's so much detail and so much life. There's so many more people in these worlds as you're running through it compared to like Zelda. Like when you're in Castletown in Zelda and Ocarina of Time, there's like probably 10 NPCs just kind of standing there doing their thing. But like Final Fantasy 9 just felt so much more lived in, so many more NPC characters kind of there. The story was wild. I honestly don't even remember the story. I mean, I do remember the story, but I don't remember all the character beats and all the things that go on. But I just remember being so just like hooked on it that I wanted to go back to this friend's house more to play the game than to actually spend time with my friend. You know what I mean? Like I was so much more in that realm, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. To eventually got to the point where I asked for a PlayStation 2 either for Christmas or for my birthday. I hope I didn't get a PlayStation 2 for my birthday. That just feels a little, Richie Rich in that regard. But maybe, but probably for Christmas. And Final Fantasy 9 with it as well, which, and then that was just the whole thing. That was like a year's process. It was 4 discs, and I was a kid who didn't understand what to do with half the time in any game. But it was because of that love of Final Fantasy IX that led me to my love of Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy VII. But I know now, like, if I went back in time now, born in 1991, I would be so pumped as I got older to grab Final Fantasy VII and just start playing it, because by the time I was old enough to be able to play those games, I think it'd be out by now. So I probably would have started with Final Fantasy VII and then go into, I don't know, Final Fantasy VIII's fine. I don't know, I tried it. It's not my thing. Final Fantasy IX, that was sick. And then, of course, 10, which I'm sorry you didn't super love it, Ryan. I
That's
feel
okay.
like it was a good story. I think you would have liked it.
I think I would have. I mean, I know a lot of story beats just because I exist in the world in which video games. But it's yeah. It was just a game that I didn't know what was going on. I did not have any idea what was going on. I played a lot of Blitzball, I think.
I sucked at Blitzball. It's funny these days. I sucked at it. I was awful at Blitzball. Yeah. But I mean, it's even interesting too, because like, even if you didn't like the Final Fantasy series, playing Kingdom Hearts, I think you can even have appreciate, like, Auron from Final Fantasy X is kind of similar, not super similar, to his version in Kingdom Hearts 2, but he's in Kingdom Hearts 2 and he's such a cool character, like going through Hades with him and like fighting off the Heartless there, and he was just such a cool character to have in your party. Like, I feel like he was a character, like, I didn't play Final Fantasy X, but I like his character. He's cool. Mm-hmm. And Cloud and Squall and all of them, like, it's if you didn't love the series, it kind of gave you an appreciation for it a little bit. You didn't play
certainly.
It. Yeah. Like, I loved Cloud, but I didn't play Final Fantasy VII until after I beat Kingdom Hearts, I think 2, honestly. Yeah. So it's very interesting how, like, those things can kind of just mix and mingle in a way that, like, make you appreciate it in different ways. Like, I never thought I liked Final Fantasy until I saw it, of course, right? It's going to give me an appreciation for the games I hadn't played as I played Kingdom Hearts. Like, oh, I should play Final Fantasy VII. Cloud's awesome. Yeah. Which is, of course, you put it in, and you're like, what is this game? It's nothing like what I thought it would be. Yeah. Until Remake came out, and it's like, okay, this is what I thought it would look like.
What I was imagining. Yeah, exactly. So good. Yeah.
I just had to wait many, many, many years.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty wild. It's crazy how, just putting yourself back in the idea of, like, being young again, knowing what you know now, like, how many games you would appreciate and just, like, be so excited for.
And how,
or maybe you wouldn't, because you played them, so, like, I'm not really excited for this anymore. You wouldn't like it as much. I don't know.
Yeah. Or for me, how many games that I bought and played that were just trash and I had no idea what I was doing, and I had no idea they were very bad. And I spent a lot of time playing those games that were not very good and I did not enjoy, but, like, the games that someone got me for a holiday or a birthday are the games that were cheap at EB Games or what's the other toy store? This is very good content. KB Toys.
EB Games. KB Toys.
Or Toys R Us, right? Those places where you can go to get video games. Yeah. Games that
all dead.
all dead. All gone. All no longer with us. Force them out. But yeah. Like, so many games that I played that were not very good, or I spent a lot of time playing, but that's okay.
That will be another episode when we talk about those games. Yeah. We had to do the flip side of this. There's actually more. It's funny, we were talking about this. There's actually more games that we didn't know we would have liked until much later.
Sure. Yeah.
That we should totally talk about. But I would love to talk about the reverse. Because I have so many games I think I can think of that I was so hyped for. Yeah. And then, like, what did I... Especially back in the day when we had... When there was no YouTube to watch gameplay. There was no... like, the major source of was articles from game magazines, which were probably paid to hype up the game to sell more. You know what I mean? So, like, it really wasn't... You didn't really get a good look at to, like, what the game would be like unless you were lucky enough to be able to play it in a store as a demo. Yeah. But that was typically, I don't know, I feel like few and far between sometimes. But yeah, anyway, totally. What a different time! What a different time that was.
This is just gonna. This whole podcast is just gonna turn into, like, the 90s and 2000s were weird for video games, huh? Like, that's just what.
It'll be DLC, then in parentheses. We're old.
Yeah, exactly.
We're old, but what if you were young and then getting old again? Which, it would be something stupid like that.
Yeah. Very good.
Wild times. But no, we're on our last game.
Last game.
Need yourself more, Ryan. What? And actually, I share this with you still. I know how great this series is. Like, I should play these games, but I just have not, and I need to. But But what is this next one for you, Ryan?
Next one for me, another game that I totally missed because I was too young or didn't have the hardware, and then went back to years and years and years and years later and fell in love with. And that's the Half-Life series. The first Half-Life came out in 1988. No way 7-year-old me would have been able to get a computer and play Half-Life. Maybe though. But Half-Life 2 came out in 2004. That's a respectable. I was an adult. I was not an adult. I was capable of playing games that required walking around and using two analogs.
You were always mature.
Yeah.
of the friend group, so it makes sense that you're an adult, I guess.
Maybe. But yeah, both really games that I totally missed. I knew of them, again, just because, like, the world, like, they were very well-known games. When the orange box shipped and had Half-Life 2 and Portal and TF2, like, I played a lot of TF2 before I touched any of the other things. So much TF2 back in the day, before I touched any of these other game experiences. But I knew of them, and I knew, like, all the weird stuff related to it, but I had no context. And again, it was the summer of 2012. The summer of 2012. I think that was the year that I had finished. I was doing my last year of college, living at home. So I must have just been, because I'm pretty sure that's when I played. Also played Star Wars. So lots of games, lots of formative games that summer.
Yeah.
Summer 2012. I had some type of computer. I didn't build my computer yet. I wouldn't build my computer until the following year. But I went back and played these games. And Half-Life 1, I'm pretty sure I just turned on cheats and blasted through it because, like, the graphics were so bad. I was not interested in experiencing it other than the story. So I just, like, turned on God mode and unlimited ammo and just, like, zoomed through it. And then
Morgan Freeman. What's his name?
Gordon Freeman. You're so close.
I Morgan Freeman. I walked through Black Mesa, hitting everybody with my crowbar. I was invincible. It's like I just picture not Morgan Freeman. Jeez, what?
Gordon Freeman.
Gordon. Jeez. Gordon Freeman just sprinting through and killing. The joke's dead. I keep thinking Morgan Freeman. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Blasted through that first game because, like, I tried it without God mode, but it was just I was not interested in playing like a Doom-like game. It is so much more than that, and it is a really incredible game that I suggest people play the Black Mesa version because it looks a lot better and it's a lot more fleshed out. But then I went to Half-Life 2, Part 1 and Part 2, and those were incredible games. They were the first time I'd played a game that was I missed Halo, so like Halo wasn't a game experience I had. It was the first time I played like a first-person shooter that was also like an adventure game, like story game. Like I had played like Call of Duty, but it was nothing like these experiences with these like interesting characters you got to know and cared about. These incredible levels with some of the best, like Ravenholm is still maybe the best designed level that has ever been created as far as I'm concerned, as far as how well it does the show don't tell and then uses the visual cues of the level to guide you in a way that I think is formative to every single game that has come after. And it was around this time when Black Mesa was announced. Like it wouldn't come out until I think 2014, but the project was like released, or there was a news article on it, and I think I'd read that and was like, oh man, Half-Life is a really wild game, I should go back and play. And then I did, and just absolutely incredible games. The games that I had heard people talk about, like Halo being this incredible narrative experience that you went through and killed aliens and did all this really cool stuff, and you played this awesome silent protagonist, and I just did not connect with that experience because I never played Halo. And this for that was kind of made me understand how cool that experience can be. And it was one of my first forays into a first-person shooter that wasn't like Call of Duty or TF2, that was more than a shooting game because of things like the gravity gun and because of the way you traverse the world, where shooting wasn't always the only option. But if you did, it was interesting and weird, and it was just such incredible games. And games that like I better understand every game I play now because of those games. And I think if I would have known more about this world, this like weird sci-fi future world with like cool aliens and these interesting characters and time travel, I think I really would have And like Chosen One, which is for me, we'll talk about in a memory card episode someday. That idea of like a chosen one or like the one person who has to save the world is really resonant with me. And just like it's such a great game, such a great series of games, such a good experience. That now again is I really love and enjoy.
It's cool how like I don't know, just going through all these games, like reminiscing again, like it's interesting. Like I don't know. I think knowing myself, I think going back in time, I think I would look forward to playing these games again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not be like, well, I've already played that. I don't really care, right? Because especially like looking at like Mario 64 for the like, re-releasing that on the Switch, I was like so psyched. Even Pokemon Snap being released on the Switch, or like Majora's Mask or Ocarina of Time. Those are all games I was so excited to play again. So I feel like if this opportunity ever came, we did go back in time, retaining what we have, I'd still appreciate those games, but just obviously a lot earlier. I don't know. Do you think you'd still appreciate those games, or would you skip them? Or
no, I think I certainly would replay them. To be the thing that I think I missed the most about some of these game experiences is not being able to, because when I played all these games, it was like the internet existed and was in the world at this point. Like 2012 and 2019, I was like an active individual on the internet at that point. Maybe not to the extent or have the internet literacy I have now, but like to be a part of, not Reddit, Game Facts in 2004 when Half-Life was out would have been incredible. Like talking about and learning about those games. Secret of Monkey Island, to be around in 2009 when that re-release happened, or even to pick it up earlier, like as soon as I was early enough, and then to like be hyped for that special edition. You could go from the old graphics to the new graphics, or same with KOTOR, to exist in the world where Star Wars, there was a really good Star Wars game out that everyone was talking about, and I could like talk with people about, because at least growing up for me, the best part about video games was playing them, but also like then going to school and talking to my friends about them, or like, you know what I mean? And to be able to do that with these games would have been so cool. And I think we did for some of them, like Uncharted and Kingdom Hearts later maybe. But yeah, to go back and talk about some of these games like while they were happening, and to like when that KOTOR twist happened, to have friends who've experienced it as well, all their minds being blown, that would have been so cool. That would have been cool to be part of that time. Yeah.
And something that I think I appreciate now more when we do play games together, and we do have those times like, oh my god, did you see that? Like that's and we still have that, and I think I still appreciate that too. And I think that this conversation has also helped me appreciate the idea of remakes and remasters. And I think a lot of people are hung up on what they don't want remakes, they don't want remasters, and I totally understand that. They want new things, and I think that new things are great too. I don't think we should have less new things, but it also gives me like the idea of like I love that Final Fantasy VII had a remake and it did so well. And I think it helped people be psyched for it in a way where they played it originally and they're super psyched for it, and they never played it and they finally had this chance. And I think that re-releasing Mario 64 on the Switch, people were really hung up on the controls, and I understand that, and it is different and frustrating, but you also get to relive your childhood in a sense again. And I think that what I'm trying to say is that I think that not having too much of one thing is always going to be helpful. So like we always need new things, but I think that valuing and bringing back some of the old things is really good too, because there's a lot of good things from the past that we can always look at and continue to appreciate. So I don't know, it's just cool.
Yeah,
it's cool and weird, and time is a human construct, and that's just weird.
Sure, yeah, very weird. Yeah, and like our brains are designed to like love things that we did when we were younger, and to love things that we used to enjoy. And I don't think you can fault anyone for not pandering to that, but creating something that's going to give people that enjoyment. Because like people are always going to like, I cannot wait for the Knights of the Republic remake. I cannot wait for a new Monkey Island game. If they said something about Half-Life, the entire internet would explode, right? Like these things are still important and exciting and meaningful. Same with Kingdom Hearts. If they, were to try to recreate that or to take it in a different direction, I mean, people still really were really hyped about Kingdom Hearts 3. Uncharted, still one of the biggest game franchises. There's Final Fantasy 14 or Final Fantasy, is that the online one?
Yeah, 14
is like the best MMO that has ever been created, as far as I would have.
Apparently,
yeah. So like these games are still really important and good, and the reason is because like you still connect with those times and those memories.
Yeah, it's wild. It's Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I think it's something to talk about more. But speaking of that, storygoers, if you have any thoughts, feelings, or perspectives, or any games you feel like if you went back to the past, you would appreciate or be psyched more for than you originally were, please let us know. We'd love to talk about that in a future episode. Email us at talesfromthecartridge@gmail.com. All the E's are 3's. Also find us on our social media. Again, Twitter is kind of dead to us. Elon Musk owns it, and honestly, I'm not about that. So Instagram is the way to go. Find us there. We'll post images and stuff. You can let us know what you think. We'll happily send you, I forgot to say this, we'll happily send you a Tales from the Cartridge sticker. We actually have different varieties now.
We do.
Updated. Our same logo sticker that we've had. We also have ones with the 4 main podcast apps under it. You're probably thinking, what for did you include? Well, you'll have to get a sticker to find out, or we'll post a picture. I don't know. One of those two. So you might as well write it anyway. We'll get you 2 of them. We'll get you each one of them if you want. And sometimes we'll include a hologram sticker, which is always fun to do. So
special.
Yeah, please do that. And if you wouldn't mind, we get a lot of downloads each month, which we super appreciate. Like I still can't get over some of the countries that this podcast reaches. It blows. I think it blows our minds. And not to speak for you, Ryan, but like it's pretty wild. So, one, we really appreciate it. Thank you for listening to us still, new and old. I say old respectively. You're not old. You've been here a while. Aged. That doesn't sound very good either. What's a good word for old? Experienced.
Veteran.
New veterans. Yes.
Wizened.
Wizened. I never heard that word. Is that made up?
Maybe.
Is that a new word for us?
Could be a new word for us.
New and wizened.
New and who knows? There are words I cannot think of.
No, yeah, new and not new. Thank you for listening to us, and if you wouldn't mind, if you have in your heart to spare 5 minutes for us to rate us on whatever podcast service you're using, I think we're so close to getting our official 5 stars on Spotify. We'd really appreciate that a lot, and we're already 5 stars on Apple, and we'd love to continue that trend if you'd be so welcome to do that. So we would really appreciate that. And yeah, it would really go a long way. Yeah. So, but. Overall, though, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you got something from this, whether it's about the easy mode in games or about games that you missed in your past that you didn't appreciate, but now you do. And hopefully you got some nice nostalgia from it and some self-reflecting, which is always great. Self-reflecting is always
so important.
Hopefully a positive thing. Unless you're reflecting about something really poor that you've done. That probably is difficult, I imagine. Focus on the good stuff, though. Yeah. Yes. And we hope that you're doing well and that you're safe. And we will see you in the next episode. Bye.